What's up guys, it's Pliskin Boy here, and today we are going to be talking about one of the most important weapons in human history, the Winchester Model 1897. Now our story starts back towards the end of the 1800s when firearms were really modernizing. We were moving away from black powder and towards more modern gunpowder. We were moving away from rim-fired cartridges, more so towards the modern equivalent, which is the center-fired cartridge, which is much more commonplace nowadays. Like maybe if you own a 22, you have rimfire. But yeah, this was the time when the idea of the modern firearm, the modern cartridge, were being invented and being formed, and as such, you had a lot of innovation, you had a lot of change. Now, some companies were very hesitant to this change, Winchester being one of them. You see, they wanted to develop a shotgun for the new 12-gauge round. John Moses Browning, the man designing the firearms that Winchester was releasing, suggested that they use a pump-action design. However, Winchester feared that a product that wasn't lever-action wouldn't be economically popular, as they imagined themselves as being the lever-action company. So John Moses Browning took a newer bullet and tried to put it into an old-school design. Now, you can look at many firearms throughout history, and anytime this happens, it doesn't usually go well. And while the Model 1887 is a pop culture icon and shows up so much in video games and movies, most recently Resident Evil 4 with Leon's super cool showy flipcock animation. However, this firearm, as cool as it is and as much of an impact as it's had on pop culture, didn't really function well. The 12-gauge round would jam up most of the times when you would try to cycle it. So after the colossal failure of the 1887, Winchester then conceded and allowed John Moses Browning to produce a pump-action 12-gauge shotgun. Now, the 1897 was by no means the first pump-action 12-gauge shotgun. However, it was the most important, as this was the shotgun utilized in World War I by US forces, and it was so effective in the trenches that the Germans, the same side that used chemical weapons, tried to classify this firearm as a war crime and stated that they would shoot and execute any US soldier found carrying 12-gauge shells or this weapon. This design would continue to be in service up until World War II. For the end of the 1800s and the start of the 20th century, this was the pump-action shotgun, and is responsible for why pump-action shotguns are still utilized by police, military, and civilians alike to this day, because its performance in World War I showed that the pump-action design has a place even when it's put up against fully automatic or semi-automatic weapons. On the civilian side, a little bit of trouble was stirred up with the 1897 because of its slam fire capability. Now, slam fire is where you can hold the trigger down and then simply pump the shotgun, and rounds will automatically fire every single time you pump, allowing for a more rapid fire configuration or usage of this shotgun. In video games, this shotgun doesn't really show up much. You see the 1887 pretty much everywhere. And usually when there's a pump-action shotgun, you'll see a Remington 870, a Mossberg 500, or maybe if you're lucky, an Ithaca 37. However, the 1897 doesn't really show up much. Why? I'm not sure. However, the few times where I have noticed it in games, it's definitely warranted its place in them. Both Red Dead Redemption 1 and Red Dead Redemption 2 make the Winchester 1897 feel right at home, as both games take place towards the end of the Old West era, and the weapons you find in the game reflect the change in weaponry, the change in the mindset, the change in society. And the 1897 definitely shifts towards the modern end, a representation of that oncoming change. As such, it's usually a shotgun you unlock later on. Within the first Red Dead Redemption game, it's one of the last shotguns you can get in the game. In Red Dead Redemption 2, it serves as a mid-tier shotgun. It comes with its 5-round capacity, and curiously enough, it utilizes the brass shell casings that were popularized in World War I. And when it comes to Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically, while I can totally understand the Browning Auto 5 being the upgrade from this pump-action design, the 1887 being the best shotgun in the game is definitely a little bit weird, especially since the hierarchy between these two guns are quite literally the other way around. Another place where the 1897 has received some recognition and some love is in the Resident Evil series. Now, while in the original Resident Evil for the PlayStation, the hunting shotgun you find towards the beginning of the game is a Remington 870, in the remake made in 2002, the Remington 870 gets swapped out by a very ornate-looking 1897. I've recently been playing this remake, and I can tell you the way you get this shotgun is pretty cool. While there's a way to properly solve the puzzle surrounding this, most players will make the same mistake I made. When you see the shotgun, you immediately grab it, not realizing that this sets off a trap in the room that you pass through. As the ceiling starts coming down, naturally you panic and you try to open the doors. Now, if you're playing as Chris, I have bad news for you. You're probably gonna die here. However, as Jill, if you hit both doors, Barry will actually come to your rescue. Still, it's quite an ordeal to get this shotgun. And is it worth it? I'll let you tell me. This shotgun is excellent for clearing certain parts of the mansion where you want the zombies to stop coming back, prevent them from becoming crimson heads, and just want to have a safe passageway for when you're making your way across certain areas of the mansion, as the ammunition for this is exceptionally rare. Its power is there, however, you really need to think about where you use it. Which are the hallways you pass through the most? Which are the areas where you'd otherwise be at your most vulnerable? So this 1897 sticks out, one, because of how you find it, and two, because of the intensely tactical application of the limited ammunition you get with it. It shows up again in Resident Evil 8. It's the first shotgun that Ethan can find when he first gets to the village, and when you find it, it is a godsend. The Lycans in this game are much smarter and stronger than any of the zombies in the classic game. So when you get the power of the 1897, it's really noticeable. Now, one thing that really makes this depiction special is that Ethan can actually cram a round into the chamber and then fire it rather than having to load shells into the magazine tube, cock the shotgun, and then fire it. This is a pretty modern technique, and you'll see it a lot in competition shooting, or again in more modern militarized units. However, it's still a viable strategy with this shotgun. This shotgun really laid the foundation for modern pump-action shotguns today, and the fact that you can do this with the 1897 showcases how, yeah, this really is the case. This really is that gun that set the standard. One thing that the main game really missed out on that you'll get in the VR version is the bayonet. Now, World War I, bayonets were the go-to since the majority of guys were issued bolt-action rifles, so for closer ranges you kind of needed to have a little sword on your gun. Now, with the 1897, the bayonet was special in the sense that you'd get guys that would stab the bayonet into someone and then slam fire 12 gauge. That is an assured way to take someone down. Now, while you can't really stick it into any of the enemies in Resident Evil 8 VR, you can use it to do a little bit of melee damage if they get too close. A really cool detail, and I wish this was implemented somehow into the main game. Now, the depiction of the 1897 is really special in Resident Evil 8 because not only does it show up as the starter weapon in a level up system, but in the game Shadow of Rose DLC, it acts as a single purpose shotgun. In Shadows of Rose, you only really get 3 means to defend yourself: explosives that you can throw, your pistol, and your shotgun. That's excluding the powers you can use throughout the campaign. So this shotgun, which has to be unlocked via a puzzle very similar to classic Resident Evil, serves as your one main hard-hitting power weapon. And again, it really fulfills that role. Resident Evil 8 is special once again because the 1897 is expressed as the starter tier shotgun and the end-all be-all. And for a game to masterfully execute a single purpose and a level up system is pretty freaking cool. And I have to say, in the Shadows of Rose DLC, it's very nice to see this in third person, even if the strap looks a little weird with the connection up in the shoulder. Seeing Rose do that like ghost loading and seeing her, reload this with the same finesse and skill set as Ethan is pretty cool. However, if there's one thing that Resident Evil 2002 and then Resident Evil 8 both get wrong, it's that they title this as a hunting shotgun, which it wasn't. And we can see a much more true-to-life representation of the role this shotgun played in Call of Duty World at War. Now in World at War, this is one of the only 3 shotguns in the game. It's utilized by the US forces, and it is, in every sense of the word, a combat shotgun. Now you don't get the bayonet and you don't get the slam fire, however seeing this in the rough environments it was intended for is pretty freaking cool. And using it in a bunker full of zombies and watching the chunks fly off of them is very true to life to how this thing was probably utilized in World War I, except swap out the zombies for men fearing their lives, and you can start to get a picture for how terrifying this weapon is and why it brought respect to the idea of a pump-action shotgun in a modern battlefield. So we have a lot of interesting depictions of the 1897 as the coming of a new age, as the starter hunting shotgun or your one means of survival, or the hardened war veteran's close-range destroyer. However, we don't really get to see any slamfire depictions of this gun. And now that I think of it, I don't think there's a lot of slamfire depictions of any kind of shotgun in video games. The only one I can really think of is Halo Infinite. So for the sake of being able to visualize this, here's the Bulldog shotgun from Halo Infinite being fired in slamfire, where I hold the trigger and the Spartan will just move the actual pump back and forth, and that's how this shotgun actuates. So yeah, the 1897 definitely isn't as popular as a lot of the other shotguns we see in video games, and while it has gotten some pretty interesting depictions in different games, it's definitely not on the same level of pop culture recognition as the 1887. Still, this is something to be respected, as without the design of the 1897 and without the crucial role it played in both World War I and World War II, shotguns as we know them today wouldn't be the same. So that's why this is not only one of the most important shotguns, but also one of the most important firearms ever designed. Anyways, this has been Pliskin, over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.